honor to taking this journey with you through these interviews. With the work that you've done, well, let me ask this first. Why did you choose archaeology? I mean, why did that become the passion for you?
Well, I think for the very thing we're talking about, that in my case, I came as someone who already was trained in the Bible and history. And then I came into the living context, and I began to say, if other people could see this, what I've seen, because it emotionally changed me. A lot of my presuppositions, I had, back in my day, it was the flannel graph, and this was people may not understand what that's about, but it's putting little cutout figures on a board to tell a Bible story.
Right.
And Jesus was dressed in pressed linen, and he worked on carpet grass, and I thought that's the way it was. And then I went to live in Jerusalem,
Right.
and it wasn't anything like that. And the culture and the style, everything was so different from what I was used to in my American Western culture. And I realized now as I come to the Bible, that's what I see. That's where they lived. And so to try to read the Bible through Western eyes with a 20th or now 21st century perspective is to miss it. I needed to go back into the world of the Bible to understand the message when it was given, how it was given, and the language it was given, and then understanding the truth there, export it to the 21st century so I could live it out. So that's why archaeology became important to me, because it puts those details and pieces together to help us explain the text more accurately.
So now what you're doing, since everybody can't go to Jerusalem, you're bringing artifacts back here so they can come visit, right here in the Western world. Have you witnessed any changes in people that were profound because they've come into contact with these artifacts, or with this direct contact with history?
Yeah, many times, which is why for the last 40 years I've done tours to the Bible lands, taking people to encounter this personally. And I see how it changes them. It's different for different people, but it's moving from what their comfort zones, their understanding of things, to seeing the way things really were. And then examining their own faith to say, is it a real faith? Is it the way it really should be? Do I have, as I mentioned earlier, a storybook faith, or do I have a real faith?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's what this experience can do. Not the same for everyone. Some people can just hold an artifact in their hand, and all of a sudden the connection's made with 3,000 years of history to say, this came from the land of the Bible, from a place, where biblical events happened, and that's enough for me. Right. Now, many people need much more, but that experience in itself is life-changing sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I might be asking that question somewhat selfishly because we're about to go to Israel. We're taking the whole film crew out there, and it's going to be my first trip there, so I'm really looking forward to it. In your experience, direct experience, what is the most profound or most important things that you feel like you've uncovered or discovered while you're in the Mideast?
Well, every archaeologist hates to hear that question because for them it's always the next thing they haven't found.
Right.
And we don't think of ourselves as Indiana Jones, on a quest to loot and find, but as a scientist, and that's what an archaeologist is, for me it's uncovering the past in such a way as to explain to the present what happened and why that's important, significance of things. Now, as I said, for 10 years, I was director of excavations at Qumran, which is a settlement from 2,000 years ago. It existed during the time of Jesus, during the formation of the early church, a very pivotal point in history. And it was a settlement and a group of Jewish people who were unknown in history until we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so they write about very interesting things. They give us a commentary on certain verses of the Bible. One is about a messianic banquet. In Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 through 9, it talks about the final day when Messiah comes and he defeats the enemies of Israel, and the kind of a victory celebration is held, and it describes all of this in very interesting terms. when you come to the Dead Sea Scrolls, someone wrote a commentary on it. They actually wrote, but it wasn't just a commentary, it was instructions on how this should be observed. They assumed they were living at the end of days. The Roman Empire was there. They needed release from their enemies. So they expected this to happen in their day. The Messiah was coming. And so they write this about how when Messiah comes, he's going to sit down and the men of renown will come together and they will have this celebration, bread and wine and other things, and it's all explained. Well, in the 10 years of excavation at Qumran, we began to dig up the remains of a communal meal, which we believe relates to that very thing. Wow. We found a wine jar, sealed, never opened in over 2,000 years. Wow. We found these animal bone deposits, but they were a meal. They were cooked, and then they took the remains of the meal with all the vessels they cooked the meal in, all the vessels they served the meal in, and they went and buried them. And I'm thinking, what kind of people, in a place so desolate where pottery and things is not cheap, would take all of this and go bury it somewhere? Well, only people who had a very strong ritual concern. They believed that this was a sacred meal. It was for a very important purpose, that if you use those dishes again for a common meal or a common purpose, it would ruin it. So they could never use them again, so they took them and buried them. Wow. And by the way, it's the only place in Israel or in the world that we know of that this thing actually happened. Yeah. But now I can connect a biblical passage, people who believe that passage actually expected to be part of that, and then the remains of their observation of those meals, and I'm the only person that really has that evidence still today. So for me, it's a very fascinating thing to combine biblical text, history, and personal experience, because I was involved in unearthing all of this.
Yeah, that's it. So, and what was the time frame to unearth this whole thing?
Well, 10 years.
Yeah,
basically.
wow.
That was, we did to excavate the entire plateau where these things were hidden.
Wow. So, that's a 10-year passion project.
Yes, for sure.
I guess it's a game of centimeters, right? As you're getting in there over time, to uncover all this stuff. So, well, let's talk about the team that's with you, okay? So what are, kind of, in a general sense, what are their backgrounds and orientations, and what's the spirit of this excavation like?
Well, every archaeological team has people with certain expertise, people who can, shall we say, be an area supervisor and control how a dig should happen, people who are involved in administration to make sure everything works well, and then people who can document those finds, and photographers and all of that. And then we have simply volunteers. And this is where it gets exciting. I bring students. People come from all walks of life, join with me in this, and they make discoveries for the first time in their life. I'll tell you a story. There was a man in his late 60s. He came. We started like 4 a.m, and it was already getting hot. By 5 or 6 o'clock, he hadn't had breakfast. He was using a pickaxe trying to dig. And he just said, look, I'm giving up. I can't do this anymore. He said, I'm too old. I'm going to change my flight ticket and leave today. And I sat down on the edge of the bulk. This is the excavation square. And I just prayed. I said, Lord, I want to encourage this man, to do. He came all this way and did this. Can you do something? And it was amazing. The very next time he stuck his shovel in the ground, he pulled up this beautifully preserved oil lamp.
Wow.
And he said, what's this? And I said, you found the find, of this year for sure.
Wow.
Perfectly preserved. And there's only been one other like this that was found in a partial form in one of the caves of Qumran. So it's a very important thing. So he got his picture holding it. It ended up on a cover of a magazine.
Wow.
He stayed 2 more weeks. So just the passion and the experience of actually making a find just changed him from disappointment to, confidence.
Wow. And with these volunteers, is that what they do? They come and cycle in and out like every couple of weeks or a couple of months?
They come for the time that they can come,
Yeah.
and we train them, and they do a certain job. And then some make repeat trips over and over through the years. And I've actually seen people, as a result of doing this, go now back to school, become an archaeologist, get the passion. So Some people, we say, get bit by the archaeological bug, and others don't. But you can see them as they're working. They just you can't even get them to stop for the day. They're so excited.
That's great. That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.